So water is such a ubiquitous everyday material that it sort of disappears into anonymity. Yet water has infinite possibilities in terms of transformation, creativity, and learning. So please join us as we investigate water. Be sure to hit the subscribe button, give us a like, leave a comment below, and if you like what you see, please share the content. In today's experience, we're using water, trays to contain the mess, heavy paper such as watercolor paper, various molds, these are just plastic clear packaging, anything to move the water like whisks and strainers, scoops and containers, funnels. And we're also making ice using clear water, colored water. We're using straws. We're using liquid dish soap, liquid watercolor or food coloring. And we're filling up the tray with water. And we're exploring it through the senses. I'm adding liquid dish soap. And we're making bubbles with the liquid dish soap. For this you can use an eyedropper, but my son is dropping just liquid watercolor into the bubbles, trying to color the bubbles. It very quickly becomes a mesmerizing, visceral, aesthetic experience. My son wants to see what happens when he includes the watercolor paper.
Oh, eso es literalmente todo lo que salió.
So he decides to add more watercolor. There's an incredible synergy between the watercolor and the water. And the transformations are gradual, ephemeral, and beautiful. Now we're making a mono print using a second sheet of paper. And this paper can be a starting point for new two-dimensional artifacts. And my son decides that he wants to save these and add to them later. Next, we're making bubbles in a white bowl. And then I'm taking the bubbles into the freezer. And we're taking the frozen bubbles and adding them into our experience. My son intuitively starts adding watercolor into the frozen bubbles and moving it around.
Chido. Es chido.
So my son decides that he wants to remove the frozen bubbles and place them back into the tray with the other pigments in it. And we decide to add some ice to the mix. ¿Es todo?
Ya, lo dejan así, solo. Mira, so, pongo un papel arriba de esto. Entonces.
While my son steps away, I start to play with the composition. Moving the ice around with some brushes, and then just bringing in some of the molds and seeing what happens when I put pressure on them. We had previously made some colored ice with using watercolor, and we're reintroducing it after we've emptied out some of the darker pigment. Also, we had taken some of the molds and frozen some colored ice into them too. And he decides that he wants to simply watch this melt and witness the process. But first, some tinkering and some exploration happens. And he revisits his idea of making imprints on paper of the colored ice. He starts to make imprints using the watercolor paper. And he says that he starts to see images of our dogs in the watercolor paper. This is an extremely open-ended experience that can go a million different ways. One of the last things that my son wants to do with this experience is to simply let the colored ice with the regular ice, leave them in the tray and watch them sort of melt together. Thanks for watching.